In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the design principles when we're preparing to create a design, and we're going to be doing some design work here, but really the focus of this video is just to give you a good understanding of when someone sends you a design, some of the upfront thought process that we go through to be able to create the kind of design that they're looking to create. So now this design was sent to us by a new EasyStone user, and of course, just like any new user as well, I have my logo I want to create in stones, and I don't have a clue where to begin. And so that's kind of what this video is all about. So this was a JPEG that was sent to us, and my first gut tells me, well, I have an idea of what I would do if this were my logo. And so we're going to kind of go with that approach. What I'm thinking in my mind is, what if we did the country in stones and did everything else in heat transfer vinyl? Especially when we're starting out brand new, we want something put on a shirt, right? Well, the country part, as far as creating a rhinestone pattern for country, very, very straightforward. Doing a rhinestone outline around text, much more involved. So if we could just do the country for now, do everything else in heat transfer vinyl. The other advantage too, I think, by doing part of it in heat transfer vinyl is you're also demonstrating to your customer that you're not a one-trick pony, because we can do heat transfer vinyl and glitter and regular vinyl, and we can do rhinestones as well. So it gives a better demonstration of what you're doing. So that's the approach that we'll take right now. So the customer sent us this as a JPEG, and these are basic fonts, so it was pretty easy for me to recreate the artwork, and that's what I did. I recreated the artwork, and I stress that because a lot of people will try and convert to a vector file and try and stone that, and that is not the approach. Almost never, ever, never do I start with a vector graphic. Now, in this case, we're not going to be using the vector graphic necessarily for creating the rhinestone pattern, but we are going to be using the vector graphic, obviously, for creating our cut file for our heat transfer vinyl. All right, so let's just start here with our bitmap, just to give you an idea of what I would typically do when I begin. So the first thing we have to do is we have to set the size of our overall design. So we have our bitmap. We have no clue how big this is. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Specialty tab and hit Set Size. And we're going to come over here and pick the left edge of our design and the right edge of our design. And we're going to set the size. So in this case, I've decided we're going to do it at 9.5 inches. Now, we always get that information from our customers. How big do you want the design? And customer might say, well, we want it this particular size, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't work, but I always get that information up front. And in this case, they asked for 9 inches, but I think that 9.5 inches will be acceptable and give us a little bit more wiggle room when we do our design work. So now we know that the design is set to the right size overall width. So now what we need to do is we need to go on an exploratory mission. And so what we're going to do here is, here in EasyStone, you see these buttons here along the right edge. If we right click on those buttons, you'll see the stone size change here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our stone size to SS10 just by right clicking on that button. And then we're going to go to the stone tab, and in this case we're using crystal, but if you right click on any of these colors along the bottom, it'll change that form color. And I think it's just a quick way to change the color. We could come in the drop down list and pick a color too, but I just think it's quicker just to click on the appropriate color square down here. And once you get used to what these colors are, it'll become commonplace to use them. Now, not every color in the library is represented here, but all the most common ones are. So anyhow, we're going to right click here to set our form color, right click to set our stone size, and we're going to hit drop stone, and we're going to drop one stone and hit the escape key. All right, now the bitmap here, let's go ahead and go back to the Specialty tab and lock that. So now I can't accidentally move it around. So here's our exploratory mission. We know we want to use SS10 stones for our lettering. That's a given. But what can we do here? Well, in my mind, I'm thinking 3 rows. When I look at this stone, I say, well, I'm going to do 3 stones wide. But the question is, the blue area in the design, that's going to be heat transfer vinyl. So can I fit 3 rows of stones within that width that I have to work with? So what I would do is come to the stone tab and just offset this stone. The amount of offset here when you're using these arrows is already determined by our stone size and the spacing between stones. Now, of course, we can override that, but you can see now that gives us perfect spacing. And sure enough, if you look here, if we're very, very strict on this, you can see that yes, we can definitely fit 3 stones wide and our heat transfer vinyl in between. Now down here, if we use our actual vector artwork that we created for this design, let's go bring it down here and just double check it. And you can see, yes, there's plenty of room to lay that heat transfer vinyl and lay our stones inside. All right, so our first part of our mission is complete, but our exploratory mission is not done just yet. Just for future thought process, let's say, because I know the intention was to do everything in stones, and we can definitely do that. Definitely do that. But here's the real key to keep in mind. If you're going to do everything in stones, be prepared to spend some time on the design. I mean, if you want it right, it's going to take some time. And there are some limitations, obviously, when you're doing your design work. So let's just take an example here. Our letter S here. Well, obviously, if we hold true to the original artwork, this stone isn't going to fit. So our next thing is to resize this SS10 stone to a 6. So if we do that, you could see that it definitely did resize. It's smaller, but we've got an issue here. There's not enough width to fit in. And, you know, if we did this in a blue, there we go. If we did this in a blue here, you could see that, you know, right here in the corner, we couldn't get all the way down there. So you're going to have, you know, you're going to have a little bit of a gap there. And so when you're outlining text, you know, especially like here in the sea, you know, you can't fit stones in there and make it look right. You know, and right here, that's just going to be a big gaping hole. All right. So, you know, you kind of have to think about that when you're creating designs, is you are limited with the stones that you're working with. Now, just like here too, if we were going to do this all in stones, would there be room here? And you could see that there isn't. There isn't room here to put that SS6 stone. So what we would have to do in this particular case, even if we bring it back down here to the vector artwork, if we come back down here, there is just barely room. So probably what I would do is I would do a bigger offset so I have a little bit more wiggle room there in our stones. So all of this is all things that you really need to consider when you go to create your design. But like I said, I think it's really going to work out well for this design. I would really push my customer, if I were doing this for an actual customer, I would really push them to do that outline and heat transfer vinyl. This word threads.ca, because of the detail and the fact that it's script lettering, and I know how I would want it to look, it's just going to be better and more readable if it's not done in stones. That's just my opinion. You could do it in stones. I just don't think it would look as nice as it would if we just did it in heat transfer vinyl. But the word country, to get that bling factor, I think that's going to be enough. So we're going to go with that premise. So back down here, let's go ahead and with our vector artwork now, let's go ahead and lock it. So we'll go back to the specialty tab and lock it. So we'll lock that down, and let's just start with probably the simplest is the letter T here. So what I do is go ahead and just plop these down. Well, let's start up here, I guess. We'll go ahead and offset one more. Place these stones right in the middle, and we're just eyeballing it. If we hold our shift key down, we can bring those straight down. And what we're looking for is this stone right here. We want the spacing right like that. Okay, and then all I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up, 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 up. Now we could actually put in a value here. Let's just say 20 offsets, and it create 20 offsets for us. All right, so now we come up to this point here, and so a decision has to be made. Either we need the stone spacing a little bit tighter because of the spacing that we have to work with in our letter T here. You can see we'd be over our heat transfer vial, but I'm going to delete that. I'm going to move this first row up to there. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first stone, hold my shift key and the last one, and hit S. Okay, and what that does is that selects everything in between, and then when I hit V for vertical, we get a vertical spacing. So then down here, this stone is too close to the heat transfer vial material, so we'll pull it up to give it roughly the same margin. We'll select that stone, hold the shift key, select this one, S, vertical. Okay, so now we've shifted all those stones ever so slightly. Now, we'll go ahead and delete this one because it's interfering with our HTV. But what do we do here? Well, we could pull this one up, like so, right? And then we would come up here and select this one and do S. That selects everything in between, and then V. All right, so that takes care of that, but what about this gaping hole right here? Well, this is where the OCD in me has a problem with that. So what I would probably do is see what it would look like if I reduce this to a 6. That would probably make me enough room for that. Or maybe I don't need to reduce it. Maybe I just thought I did. See there? I didn't have to reduce it. I think even though the spacing's a little bit tight, I think it'll work that way. So you can see I just make that small little adjustment there. And, you know, we could move that stone over a little bit and pull this one down a little bit and just kind of tweak that spacing so it's as perfect as you want it to be. All right, so back up top here, what we have to do is when you're going horizontally, we kind of have to, these stones are not lining up. And they really need to for symmetry and so forth. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take, let's go ahead and let's do this. Let's delete those 3, those 6 stones, and let's offset them. So now they're all perfectly straight, but you can see there's a little bit of spacing issues. So we'll just do this again. Select vertical. And then we'll come back up here and this one all the way down to this one, vertical. And then this one to this one. So we'll select vertical. And it's, you know, the change is very, very slight, but there we go. So now you can see it doesn't really look that much different, but these are perfectly aligned. So then what we can do here is take these and we can offset that way. And so you can see everything is fitting inside perfectly, but now we've got an issue, bit of an issue, and that's this right here. You know, we've got a big gap there. We don't have enough room. So what we're going to do here, we don't have enough room for another stone, so we'll just tweak our artwork. Well, and we'll do that at the end. I'll show you that at the end. All right, so now we've got that rolling. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and do the next thing here. And so we'll just pull over one stone. And again, we'll do this offset thing. I want to bring these stones down here. I want to make sure, and it looks like that's fine. It looked to me like maybe this R, and I think it actually is, a little bit wider than our T. But not, even though it is a little bit wider, I think it still will work okay. So I'll just leave that like it is. But you can see there's a little bit of thought process that goes into creating a really high quality design. But if you know what you're doing, it really is pretty straightforward. So we'll go ahead and we'll do 20 offsets going the other direction down. Okay, and then we can delete the stones we don't need. And we know we don't need these, but you can see it's imperfect spacing, so I'm just going to change it just a little bit. And then we can go all the way to the top, select all in-between stones, vertical spacing, select all the in-between stones, vertical spacing, select all in-between stones, vertical spacing. Okay, so that takes care of that. So that takes care of our R. Now what's the next most significant part? Well, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because we need to take these 3 stones, let's offset those, and push it down a little bit. And this is again where we have to make some changes to our artwork. You can see we need extra room here. So we're going to come in and we're going to modify our R, because right now this stone is overlapping our HTV border and we can't have that. But we need this spacing up here. So that's okay. That's a minor fix. We'll fix that at the end. I'll show you how that works. Alright, so now let's go ahead and take these stones and offset them. And you know, we might have to do something here with our R. We've got to think about how we want the finished product to look. Obviously that's important, and I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but we're probably going to have to, you know, modify our vector part of our R pretty good. But that's fine. We can do that at the end. So what I'll do now is, again, I think I'll take 1 stone and put this at the bottom, and I'll offset the 3 times. And then I'm going to set this where it needs to be, horizontally, and that, you know, that bottom base point there. I think I'll be happy with that. And then we'll offset vertically, and we'll stop there. And now we got to just fill this in as best we can. So I'm going to push this down here to give us that kind of roundedness, and then I'll pull this stone over. What I like to do when I'm creating a rhinestone design, I like to have my border, get the border in, and then whatever fills in the middle fills in the middle. That's kind of how I like to do it. But you can see this stone is a little bit close to our HTV border, so I'm just going to pull that in a little bit. Grab those and H for horizontal spacing. We could probably push that just a pinch. Alright, so you can kind of see how we're going to follow this around, like so. And the stones will kind of dictate what we do. You know, it actually works out pretty well that way. Now here, I'm just left clicking with my mouse and dragging, and then right click to make a duplicate. And you can see that's too big, so bloop, we'll make it a 6. And now it fits in like a glove, right? So that takes care of that. So there's our country. And then we're going to take these stones and we'll pop them over. And then what we have to do is we have to fill in the difference. Now, I've been using CorelDRAW for so long, I've developed some bad habits in a way. In a way, it's actually very low tech and it works really well. Where I would just hand place these stones. And don't be worried about the spacing. What we're worried about is putting these stones in such a way where that border of that HTV is. So we're just making duplicates. We don't care about spacing. You can see what we're doing. Very low tech. Very low tech. Anyone can do that, right? So we're just looking at that edge. And then when we're done with that, we can select 1 stone, hold your shift key, and click 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 and click, and you can see we have all those stones selected. Now you see this little tick? That tells you this stone is selected. Alright, so now we'll go to the editing tab and we'll hit Reese Pace, and Reese Pace will fix the spacing. Now you can see I could still select a cat through all those stones, so we hit plus next to Reese Pace and see we can get that. Either we want it that tight or we want it that tight. Those are the 2 choices we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it that tight and hit delete stones. Alright, so now here you can see we've got a problem because we have a stone collision. So we could take care of that by just dropping it to a 6 and fitting it in the hole that way. Alright, so now what we're doing here obviously is we're doing 3 stones. So so when we go to fill in our R, that's what we want as well. We want 3 stones. So again, I would probably just take the low-tech approach. We have our border, we have something to guide us where the next row is going to be. So, and because it's just a few stones, I would go ahead and do this, just like this. Okay. And then once we have that in place, once again, we can set our spacing to be nice and even using our Reese Pace tool. And how I ever designed without that Reese Pace tool, I have no idea, because that sure saves me a heck of a lot of time, and the end result is much more perfected that way. So now we're going to go and throw in our 3rd row, and you can see it came together pretty nicely. It's a little bit tight there, so let's see if Reese Pace can respace that for us and give us enough wiggle room. And yeah, I think that'll work. It's a little bit tighter, but yes, it will work just fine. So I think that looks pretty good, considering, you know, sometimes it's not exactly perfect, exactly the way we want it, but it's as close as we can possibly get it in this particular situation. All right, so now we'll go ahead and move on to our Y. So we'll select these 3 stones and bring them straight over. Make sure they're sitting where they need to sit horizontally. And then we'll come back here and we'll offset vertically. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take 3 stones right here, pull them over, and you can see it's a little bit tight here. You know, I might, if I were doing this, I might come in here and modify our artwork just a little bit, just to give us a little bit more wiggle room, because it's a little bit tight. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just pull that border over, and we'll change the artwork here in the middle to give us a little bit more room. But we'll do that, all the artwork manipulation, here at the end. So I'm going to take this stone and this stone. Watch this tool. It's really quite handy. Use it all the time also. But we'll select this stone, and we'll hit Shift, Add Stones. You can see it just creates a bank of stones there. So I can select that and just copy it over, just like so. And there's that first part of our Y. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to flip it over and just dump it right back on top again, like so. Okay, you say, well, geez, that looks like a hot mess. And yes, it does look like a hot mess, but if I come in here, I'll delete my stone paths. I'll come in here, I'll do my check spacing. Okay, it's going to go through and delete a bunch of stones for us. And then what I can do is I can come in here and I will space this apart like so, and I'll just do that for each row. So we'll just come back in and space each row out. This row here, we might have to delete a stone. It's really tight, but I think I would rather have it really tight in that one row than to have a bigger gap there. So we'll go ahead and just keep going here. So you can see we are going to need to modify our artwork a little bit, but I think it looks fine just like that. And this stone here, I think, needs to go over a little bit more. This stone here should be right dead center. There we go. All right. So what we could do too is we could, if we wanted to fill that in a little bit, we could, drop it to a 6. And then you'd have it filled in a little bit more. So it just depends on how you want to do it. I think for this example, we'll just go back to having an SS10 stone there. It'll be fine. All right, so that takes care of that part. So let's go ahead and do our N. And I guess we'll start at the top with our N. So we're going to pull over 3 stone widths. Looks like we got to make a change here too. As you can see, our N is just a little bit too narrow, so for 3 stones, so that's okay. We'll make that change. And we'll just offset this down. We'll do one more, I guess. All right, and then we'll go ahead and copy this over. We need that extra room there, so we're going to just kind of have to live with it. All right, so now what do we do? Well, we have a tool here that can be helpful in certain situations. I'm going to select this whole row of stones, and we're going to open up Easy Guides. And for Easy Guides, what we're going to ask Easy Guides to do is on each of our selected objects, I would like a center horizontal guideline. So you can see, look at that. We got all those guidelines created for us. And what we need to do, of course, is we need to create a guideline going at an angle. So let me show you what we're going to do. We're going to pull over one stone here, and we're going to say that's going to be our angle. So I'm going to select them both. Let's open up Easy Guides again. Shift Guided Angle. So now you can see we've created this angle. And you'll see what we're going to do with that angle here momentarily. But I need this angle. Also, I need this guide right here at this point, I think, as well. Alright, so now that I have that, what I can do is I can take this stone and put it right there at the intersection. And I can take this, put it right there at the intersection. And this one here is going to go right there at the intersection. We have to get that angle of our letter N. This one right here is going to go right there at the intersection. And this one here does not need to go at the intersection. So that one does not need to go, and this one does not need to go at intersection. This one doesn't need to go at the intersection, and this one doesn't, and this one doesn't. But this one probably should. And of course these all would need to as well. So we'll go ahead and move those to that intersection. And that will give us the angle of our N. Perfect. And so now what I have to do is we have to come back in and fill in the gaps. So here we're going to H for horizontal, equal spacing. And here's where I get frustrated because we don't have enough room. So what I would probably do is, let's see here, what would I do? And this is where you got to play with it a little bit. Probably what I would do is I would probably throw in some 6s here. So maybe what I'd do is see if I could drop this to a 6 and space these out horizontally. Because I really like a tight stone fill. So I get really obsessive when I don't get it. So anyhow, I mean, that's as good as it gets, I guess. So let's just go ahead and throw in some 6s here, because I think that's the best solution to give us as tight a fill as we can get. And then we'll go back to horizontal. So we're just spacing all these stones out horizontally perfectly. Alright, so then we'll go back to doing this one horizontal, and what we'll have to do is go back to dropping in some 6s. Oh boy, that's tight, but that's okay. We'll live with it. Here we'll drop this to a 6 as well, and this is tight as well. Let's see if we can shift that like so. And maybe what we'll do is we'll drop that to a 6. And you can see there's a hole there, but we don't have the room, so let's drop that to a 6. And then that would give us our room that we need. So you remember earlier I was saying that the stones kind of dictate how it all works out. And that's just as good as we're going to get. I don't think we have room to squeeze You know, I technically, even though these stones are overlapping a little bit, in a few areas, that's okay. And I'd probably go ahead and do it that way, even though they're nearly touching, overlapping. When you go to cut, it won't really matter. We could come in here and respace these. And even though this is very, very tight, because it's just in this one area, your stones will still brush in there just fine. But the other thing I guess we didn't consider is we've got this issue here where we need to make room for our HTV coming down. So we actually probably are going to do something like this. So it's going to be tight right here where it's touching that HTV. And then we'll bring that stone down, and maybe we'll just space those out a little bit as best we can. And that'll have to do right there. So then over here, we're just going to pull this up as we need, like so. And then I will probably just delete a stone. And let's try this. Let's go all the way up as far as we can, I guess. So this first row will go all the way to the top. We'll select and vertical shift. And then the next row will go to here. Select and vertical shift. And then the next row here will go all the way up to here. And vertical shift. And I think that'll be fine. Now to get rid of all these guidelines, just right click on EG, and that'll get rid of all of our guidelines. Now sometimes it's good to peel away our work up to this point. Let's peel it away and look at it all by its lonesome, and just make sure we're not doing things too goofy. And yeah, I think that still looks good. I'm happy with that. It's readable. That's the main thing, is that it's readable. It's looking good. So we'll go ahead and leave it in place there. So now hopefully the rest of these letters will be a little bit easier on us. We won't have to do so much manipulation. But you can see a good design. It takes a little bit of work, and it takes a little bit of know-how. And yeah, I mean, to create a really nice looking design, it's going to take us a little bit of effort here. So we'll bring that stone down to there. We don't have room for another one, so we'll just go ahead and select these stones here. I will show you this tool, because if you're selecting a mass of stones there, we can just use our freehand selection tool here in CorelDRAW X6. We'll pick up all those stones, but this very last one, and then hold your shift key and click that. And then that will tell Reese Pace how to respace properly. So now you can see those stones have all been respaced around. We'll do the same thing here. A little bit trickier to use your freehand selection tool when we're picking out of the middle, but it's still doable. The more you use it, the more you'll get used to it. We want to make sure those little tick marks, all of the stones all the way up are selected. I think they all are, but this one. Shift key for that one. Shift key for this one, respace. Hardly even moved, but that's good. I'm glad so same thing here. We'll go back to our freehand pick tool here, and we'll pick up all these stones. So you can see they're all selected, and we'll respace. That took care of that. A little bit of respacing. Now, I think what we'll do is we'll take these stones that we already have in place here, and we'll just flip them over. So we're going to make a copy of them. Just flip them over, and let's bring them over here for the other side. Now, obviously, we have to change how this is all set up, but easy enough to do. So we're going to delete this one, and this one, and this one. This is going to have to go to an SS6. So it doesn't interfere with our HTV. And this one probably too. And then we can probably go back to a 10 there. We'll do well, I'll tell you what, let's do both of these as 6s. And then this one here will be a 6. So you can kind of see how we position this. Going this direction, we want to fill that gap in as much as we can. So let's make these 3 6s. So now that we have all of our stones kind of the right size, then we can select these. And when we do that Reese Paste function, it'll just even that spacing out. Just that little bit. You can see here the spacing is a little bit different. So let's see if we can't space that out a little bit more evenly. And we'll hit Reese Pace. And yeah, that looks really nice. We just made that little bit of change there. But you can see it all fits in there really nice. I think that's going to work out just fine. Alright, so now we kind of need to do the same thing with our C and our O here. I think we'll start with our C though. So what we'll do here is we'll pick a stone, drag it over. We'll offset it a couple of times. Set these stones left to right. So they fit within our HTV window like we want. And then we'll offset here to a certain point where they start to curve. And then we'll move that over. So you remember what we did over here, right? With our R, we took care of the boundary, and then we filled in where we could. So we'll do that again. Very non-technical. I tell you what we do want to do though. We want to copy these dead across, just like this. In fact, I tell you what, let's do this. No, that's okay. We'll leave it. I am actually going to pull over a guideline of where the center point should be. Because once we do this side, we should be able to just mirror it and do the other side. So always look for ways where we can only do half the work. So there we go. So now that's taken care of. And we will select all of these and Reese Pace. That takes care of that. And then we'll go ahead and set this stone. And in fact, we could use our offset tool to offset 3 stones down, and then we can just fill in the gap. Again, very non-technical approach, but one that I actually think works pretty well. So we'll go ahead and select these stones all the way down. Let's go ahead and respace those. And same thing here. We'll take these. Tell you what, let's delete our stone paths for that. And then we'll take these 3 stones and respace them. Alright, so now we have all of our stones on this side the way we want them. So now what I would do is, let's see here, I'm just going to kind of just do a little bit of manipulation. Tiny little changes. But then what we'll do is we'll just take this and flip it over. And then we'll have the exact same thing there. And then now that we have that, well, now I can just take this and flip it down here. We'll set our bottom of our HTV there. And we can manipulate our artwork a little bit. You can see right here, either we're going to change our C and move it up a little bit or down a little bit. And for this example, I think what we'll do is we'll just delete this. And let's just move this. And this will move to the top, and this will move to the top. And we'll come back around to here, and we'll respace all of those stones around and do the same thing. We'll just select all of these, respace it around, Now, yes, we have some extra stones here we can dispose of. And then one more time, we'll respace it around. And delete. And yes, we do have that extra stone in there as well. All right, so now that takes care of the bottom, and then really all we need to do is connect the dots. So we'll just throw in a few extra stones here. And then we'll just take this stone down to this one, select everything in between, vertical spacing. You can see it got pretty tight there. So we'll try it again. Select vertical, that's better. So then we'll select this one down to this one, select everything in between. Again, it's a little bit tight, so no worries. We'll try it again here. Get that spacing how we want it. Still tight, so we'll delete one more. Okay, well, that was exhausting, right? But we got her done. So that is the C. And so now what we can do, of course, is we can use our C to finish our O. So we'll just select this half, bring it over. Then we're going to flip it and center to center. So you can see our O is maybe just a little bit different in width than our C is. So let's see if we can fit it in here or not. And here's another case where maybe we'll just make the necessary changes to the artwork, to the vector artwork in our O, so it fits in there a little bit better. So we'll go ahead and leave it the way it is for now, and we'll change our vector artwork here in a moment. Let's offset these down. So we don't have room for these, but we'll just pull this down and pull this down, push this up, and then we'll space these stones out a little bit. So select vertical spacing, select vertical spacing, and select vertical spacing. Same thing here, let's offset these stones down. And we'll pull that down a little bit. We'll push that one up and this one up. Select everything in between, vertical spacing. Select everything in between, vertical spacing. Select everything in between, vertical spacing. All right. So our stonework is done. We made it. And I think it looks pretty good. Now if we peel this away, let's peel it away and look at it. Ah, yes, it's pretty. That's going to look really good. All right, so that takes care of that. So now the fun part comes in where we're going to go in and we're going to make a few changes to our vector artwork to take care of the rest of it. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and let's ungroup. And we may have to ungroup several pieces. See, we have the bottom text, we have our border, which appears to be grouped. So there's our orange border, and then we have our black text. That also would have to be ungrouped. So now everything's ungrouped, and all I'm doing is clicking on it and then right-clicking. You could choose lock or unlock that way. So let's just start over here. We don't have to make any changes to our letter C, but we do have to make a little bit of change here because this is just a teeny bit too tight. So what I'm going to do is just double click on the O, and you see these nodes here? We're just going to drag them ever so slightly. Just drag them over a little bit. In fact, I'm probably going to, nope, I can't delete that one. Okay. So double click on our O and just drag it over just a teeny little bit. We could definitely, I'll tell you what, let's change this. Right click to line. Sometimes you'll want to do that. We could do that pretty easily. This will become a cusp node up here. So I'm just going to pull this over a little bit where I think I want it. And then down here, this is a line. So I'm just going to pull it over a little bit. And in fact, if I really wanted to get technical, I could pull over a guideline and snap it to that node. And this node right here at the bottom should line up to that guideline. And then we know that line's perfectly straight. But that's being really technical. So let's pull this one over a little bit. That gives us a little bit more wiggle room. Let's go ahead, because I only know one way of doing it, and that's perfection. So I'll go ahead and pull that over, and we'll find this node here, and just see that little bit of distance there. We're just gonna peel it straight over, and that should give us a little bit more distance. Now here we're gonna just change this to a line. So let's come in here, and so there must be a node here. Sometimes the nodes are hard to see, but there's one right there. So now you can see that snap to a perfect line. But now if you look at that spacing, it's pretty even, right, on both sides. So I think that's just going to look better. Now here it's really tight, and you can see that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to peel that over a little bit. You know, if we need to, this needs it to be a cusp node, and this, I think I'm just going to go 2 line, and now we're going to smooth that out, and then we could just tweak. So yeah, it takes a little bit of work, but it's a minor adjustment. And luckily, once we create it once, we don't have to create it over and over and over again. So you might as well do it right the first time. Okay. So there we go. And now that you're seeing this kind of firsthand, you might have a better appreciation of the work we go to create our designs. Because we want a really good looking design. It takes a little bit more work, but the end result is definitely pays off to spend the extra little bit of time to get it right. All right. So now what I need to do is just peel this over just a tiny little bit. I don't want much room there. We're going to right click on this node, change it to a cusp, and then we're going to take this guideline here, and we're going to position it where we need it. So I guess we're going to position it right here. Then we're going to move all these nodes to it. So right there, change this. Got to get rid of this node. Change that to a line. Pull this node over. Tell you what, let's change it to a line as well. And so you can see the distance here. This is kind of where we want to mimic. This isn't far enough. So like I said, I like to really get pretty particular and try and get it as close to perfect as I can. So now I'm a little bit more happy with the amount of spacing that we have here. So now we can just pull this node over a little bit in line. We'll pull that node over a little bit in line. And so now we have our pretty much the way we want it. Our stones are going to fit in there just fine. We didn't have to make any changes to our U artwork, so we can leave that alone. We did have to make some changes to our N here. So we're going to double click on our N, and you can see we have to make quite a bit of change here. So we're going to pull that way over, something like that. Let's go ahead and pull over a guideline, because I would like these nodes to line up right. So then this peak comes way down here, something like that. And this has got to come over. And this may be down a little bit to give us that room that we need to fit in there. Okay, so that takes care of that. And then we need to do a similar thing up top here. So we'll go ahead and pull this straight across where we need it. We'll put our guideline at that node, and then we'll find this node and pull it down. And then obviously this one's got to come over to give us that extra room. And then this one can come down just a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. I think I'll be happy with that. So that takes care of our N, fitting in our artwork. For our T, we're just going to pull this up. Oops, we're going to select all those nodes going across and pull it straight up. Okay. And then our R here, we'll just make a couple of, give it a little bit more room there. And then we're going to take these nodes and pull them straight down just to give us that extra room there. And I think that's basically all the changes. Now we did need to change our Y a little bit too. So let's do that. So we're going to double click on our Y. There's two nodes here on the left. We're going to pull those over a little bit, straight across. And then there's two nodes here on the right. We're going to pull that over a little bit. Just a tiny bit more, just another fraction. That looks good. That looks good on the sides. I would probably pull this up a little bit. I don't know, maybe not. It wasn't much difference, but I think a little bit of difference. And then we'll pull this one over. Give us the room that we need. We are going to right click on this and change it to a line. Same thing here, we're going to pull that one over. We're going to right click, to line. And then this bottom node here, we're just going to pull it straight up. Something like that. Alright, so now we have all of our artwork manipulated, all of our lettering manipulated to give us the room that we need to fit in our rhinestones. And then we're going to right click and get rid of all of our guidelines. And would you believe it, there's a bit more work to do. But this is the fun part. And before we go any farther, I should save my work. Could you imagine doing all that and then Corel crashing and we lose it all? What a bummer. So now that's fixed. So now what we're going to do is we just got to finish this up because part of it's going to be HTV and part of it's going to be stones. And I'll show you the proper setup for that. I do want to make one little change here. You see this weird little thing here? We need to take care of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click and add a node on either side right there. And all these nodes down here, let's delete all of them. Let's right click on these nodes and change them to a cusp. And then right click, to line. And we'll just right across. It'll just make for an easier cut right there. Alright, so now what we're going to do is this. And see this little bump here? We're going to get rid of that too. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our black lettering here for, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's make a copy of this and manipulate the copy. So our black lettering, we're going to cut a hole right into our orange background. So we'll come in here, trim. Now that should have a hole. Ta-da! You can see, fits in there like a glove. Now we do see one extra line here, so we're going to select everything. We're going to delete stone paths, and we're going to check spacing. Found 16 overlapping stones, so we'll go ahead and dispose of all of those. And those are stones that are just sitting right on top of one another is what it found. Alright, so that takes care of that. And then the only other thing to do is to fix where this threads is sitting directly on top of our background. We need to create a trap. And we have a function in here inside EasyStone that makes it a lot easier for us. So we'll go to our Specialty tab and open up Vinyl Essentials here. And all we're going to do is mark our orange object to be modified. And then we're going to take our text here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go inside overlap and hit overlap objects. Okay. And then we're going to take our orange and push it back to the bottom. Now, what actually happened there? Watch what happens. Let's double click on our orange. See what happened? Is this slight overlap. So instead of having it sit directly on top where all this excess material is, it just goes ahead and creates this a slight overlap. Now sometimes you can see like this piece is so tiny, we can get rid of that. And so we're just going to kind of look and see what we need to do. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to back up a step or two. Because sometimes, you know, even me knowing what I'm doing, I tend to jump ahead a little bit. All right, so let me point this out. This text is editable. I can type. If we go over here in wireframe mode, because it's a script text, you see all these overlapping areas right there? We can't have that. That would not cut the way we need it to cut. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this text, and we're going to come in here and use the weld option right here. So we click on weld, and you can see now all of that's taken care of. But now our text is no longer editable either, which is fine for our purpose. So now we can mark, we can inside overlap, we can push our orange to the back, and if we double click on our orange, you'll see what we need to get rid of, because it's so, you know, those areas are so tiny that they wouldn't cut very well anyhow. And in fact, I'm going to select that and reduce the nodes just to give us a little bit cleaner artwork. So when we go to cut, we're going to cut out this orange like so. And see, there's parts of this, honestly, probably, even though you're not supposed to layer glitter on top of glitter or regular heat transfer vinyl on top of glitter, you can see that this is exactly what would cut. And yeah, I mean, what I'd probably do if it were me, I guess, might as well show you how to do it. There's a couple of different ways. Either you could just layer threads right on top of the background, which honestly I might consider doing, or we could clean this up. These little fine areas aren't going to make or break you. So what we're going to do, if you hold your C key down and double click to add a node, it's always going to add a cusp node. And that's significant because I'll show you why. We need a cusp node. I'm going to delete that tail. And if I right click and hit to line, this is not a cusp node. So watch. If I right click and hit to line, watch what happens. See, you get this weird thing here. But if I change this, or maybe it's this one. Now those are both cusp nodes. What's going on here? So that tells me that there's another node somewhere. Ah, there it is. There's another node down there. So we're going to delete that node. Now change it to a straight line. And now we can cut that off just like that. Okay? So that looks better. This is fine. The H is fine. This little part, this little tail on our R here, I'd go ahead and delete that. Right click to line. Just go straight across. There's a little node there. This, I'd probably, I don't know. I might go ahead and just fix this. So maybe what I'd do is just come in here, grab a square, let's weld it up, and then I can come in here and more easily modify this. So we'll add a cusp node, just like so. Delete all of these. And this is getting really, you know, quite particular. You wouldn't necessarily have to do all of this, but I figure what the heck. I went this far, you might as well go the distance. So we'll weld those up. that kind of cuts that right there. And then we can come in here and just tweak this a little bit. Same thing here, that's already broken for us. So we'll right click, to line, delete that one, right click, to line, and we'll leave that like it is. We'll leave the D like it is. This we can delete. That we can leave. That we can leave, I guess that's okay. This will delete. And there we go. So we'll just delete out those little areas so it's not sitting. It is going to still be overlapping ever so slightly, but it won't be sitting directly on top. Now to line this back up, we can just, I'll just take this blue one. We'll make it blue. And we'll take them both. And then I can just hit C. And then everything's lined back up again. I'll push this all the way to the bottom. And then delete my orange one. Okay? So now when I double click on my blue, do you see that little bit of overlap we were talking about? So it should sit quite nicely. Alright, so let's go ahead and throw a weed box around this bad boy. And let's just go ahead and deck it out. I always make a copy of it. And so this, maybe, I don't know, we'll make it black. And for this, maybe what we'll do is we'll add some glitter, like so, and then we'll simulate those stones, and then maybe we could turn this to white so you can see how that pop, or we could just leave it black too. You know, it'd look great. So if we were to put this on a gray shirt, right, and then we made this the same color gray, and then we could, for our glitter, you know, maybe we'll just do it a different color glitter. You can see how great that looks. We got one layer of HTV, and then obviously we have our threads in between. So we spent an hour, and you know, I didn't work at full speed, but we spent an hour creating the design, and the end result obviously is what's important, and the end result is a good looking result. But you could see the amount of detail it took to get here. So it wasn't just click a button and magic happens. You know, it's going to take a little bit of work when you're doing designs on this caliber that are a little bit more complicated. This is definitely not something that you should do right out the gate, but it gives you a better insight of what we actually do to go about creating a design. And there are all kinds of tools in EasyStone that are useful in various different areas, but certainly, you know, it took a fair bit of know-how with EasyStone how to apply those tools, a little bit of know-how on the Corel Draw side of things too. And these types of designs are just more complicated to do. You can't just click a button and magic happens. But honestly, really, you think about it, if I were going to charge someone for this design, you know, you're maybe talking maybe a $30 to $40 design fee, you know, if I were going to do this for someone, and that's reasonable for your customer. You know, you're not going to spend hours and hours on the design. It's fairly reasonable for your customer. But you got to see every single click from the very first click to the very last one. So it gives you just a little bit better insight of what you're in for when you're doing, you know, really nice custom design work, the amount of effort that you have to put in to make it happen. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Who knows, maybe you didn't even get this far. But if you did, good for you. And thanks for watching.